Hey guys, so after weeks of introduction, we're finally getting into the real topic, into the real discussions that we want to have in a few weeks. And so this week and next week, we will share with you some Bible passages why some people believe that the Bible does say that women should not be in leadership, and why some people say that the Bible does say that women should be allowed in leadership. So from both perspectives. And of course, in these videos, we will not share you all the arguments. We will give you some of the main ones from either side, but then on top of that, we will give you some links, we will give you some videos, we will give you some more information so that you can then really come up with your own opinion. You don't just hear from me, you don't just hear from Alethea, but you actually hear from a lot of different people all over the world. Alright, so with that being said, today is the video that gives you some information on why some people believe that women should not be allowed in church leadership. And I want to share with you just the two main arguments that I'm aware of and why that when I had these kind of discussions. The first one is that in the New Testament we see the same commandment several times. It's one thing if the Bible gives a commandment once, but it's different if the Bible says the same thing several times. And that's why some people do believe that this is a commandment not just for a specific church, not just for a specific situation, but it's really something that applies to all churches in all times. For example, 1 Corinthians 14:34, "Let the woman keep silent in the churches, for it is not permitted unto them to speak, but they are commanded to be submissive, as also says the law." 1 Timothy 3, verses 1-2. "This is a true saying, if a man desires the office of a bishop, he desires a good work. A bishop then must be blameless, the husband of one wife, vigilant, sober, good behavior, given to hospitality, apt to teach," and so on. So clearly, Paul, in his letter to Timothy, says that he's talking about appointing men to the office of eldership, and he's not talking about women. Titus 1:5-6, "For this cause I left you in Crete, that you should set in order the things that are lacking, and ordain elders in every city, as I had appointed you. If any be blameless," and again, "the husband of one wife, having faithful children, not accused of rebellion or unruly," and so on and so forth. So throughout the New Testament, whenever it comes to leadership, these people argue that it's always addressing men. And that's why it's not just for a specific church, that's not why it's not just for specific circumstances, but it's always clearly stating that men should be appointed in such positions. And since it's stated several times, the argument goes that these people then believe that's why it's a global commandment, that's why Paul didn't just address that specific church, he didn't just address that specific time, but it is for all churches all the time. The second main argument why some people believe that women should not be allowed in leadership is because Paul one time references creation as the reason for giving the argument. 1 Timothy 2, verses 11-13, "Let the woman learn in silence with all subjection, but I permit not a woman to teach, nor to have authority over the man, but to be in silence." So here he gives the same argument, and then he gives the reason why he says this argument is true. He says, "For Adam was first formed, then Eve." So Paul here is clearly referencing creation as the reason why men should be allowed in leadership in the church, but not women. And since it's creation, these people argue, then it has nothing to do with education. It has nothing to do with that particular church. It has nothing to do with the culture. It has nothing to do with the situation that these churches were in 2,000 years ago. It has nothing to do with sin. It has nothing to do with living in a fallen world. Because Paul cites creation before the fall. That's why these people argue. That's why these people say. That's why it's a global commandment. And it's not just a specific advice or addressing a specific situation in a specific church. So these are the two main arguments that I have heard why some people believe that women should not be allowed in leadership. Now there is one big problem with this position that these people most of the time do not have a good answer for. And that is then simply the question, what if a woman shows up in church who says, I'm called to be a pastor, I'm called to preach, and I would like to use this gift, I would like to now fulfill this calling by leading or by teaching in this church. Most people who have the position of not allowing women in church leadership do not really have a good answer for this kind of question. Because basically the only reasonable answer in this situation is to say, you have heard wrongly from God. No, you are not called to be a preacher, you are not called to be a pastor, you are not called to be a leader in the church, because the Bible clearly says that that's not allowed. That is a big problem with this position, that most people who hold this position do not have a good answer for. So these are the two main arguments that I have heard why many people believe that women should not be allowed in church leadership. Now, these are not all of them. As I said, with this video, I'll also send you some more links. I'll send you, we'll put something on the Aletheia website where you can then read some more and listen to some other preachers and hear from other people. And so for this week, what we will give you is some material why people have the position that I just shared. And then next week, you will hear some other materials, you will hear some other people who say that women should be allowed in leadership and what reasons they have for their position. So that's then for next week, but until then, I want to encourage everyone, please think about this, think about whether you agree with these things with these materials that you get this week, think about why you biblically agree or disagree with these arguments, and then try to be objective. Don't go in there, like I said last week, don't go into eisegesis or something like that and come up with, well, I have to prove my point. So looking at all the arguments already from the perspective of the decision we've already made. But instead, I want to encourage everyone, just allow all of us to really look at the text and really allow the text to tell us what it's truly saying. And even if it's contradicting, even if it doesn't make sense to us at first, but let's look at each passage that we will be studying along this topic. Let's look at it with proper exegesis. Let's look at it and let's not say, no, that can't be true, or let's not look at it with a filter, but really let's go into each passage and say, what is the text truly saying? Interpretation can come later, comparing can come later, but let's look at all these texts and say, what is the text really saying? What does it really mean? And then we can go into the analysis, then we can go into these discussions, then we can compare in all these things. But we need to start at that point. What does the text truly say? So, with that being said, happy studying over the next few days, and we'll see you this weekend.